I'm optimistic. I don't really know how this video is gonna go yet. I think the fact that you're awake during this one might improve the quality of the content to some degree. Because I was thinking about the algorithm, right? Oh, few announcements. So, first and foremost, I need to apologize to Daniel Sloss's girlfriend. I'm so sorry, man, girl. Like, dude, I didn't mean any offense. I do not, I just thought I was making a funny, and I made a funny, and I like someone else completely today anyway, so, as it happens. Like, that Daniel Sloss is so, whenever I posted the video, which was about, 2-3 days ago, it's like, I've liked a monk, and a few exes, and a few people I've never even met, and a few people who are dead since then. So I do hope that your boyfriend does not die, though. Okay, so that concludes my apologies. Just because it would have fallen in the category of odd crushes, and you're familiar with that too. Okay, so that's out of the way, and then I got some, following the last video, I got some messages from my fans, and I got one from my cousin, and he said, congratulations on curing depression and insomnia and suicidal tendencies just basically overnight. And I was like, thank you, man, I do, nah, just he flattered me, right? He said, how did you do it? And he wanted to have a Skype conversation, and I was like, okay, we don't know when my soonest convenience will be, but considering we're all self-isolated here, I assumed it would be quite soon, but then I got the idea for this video a bit quicker, so we can still have that chat, but we can also have that chat because we already had this chat yesterday, so now I think it wouldn't be that big of a deal if we have this chat today again, because it's about the algorithm, and the fact that. And I was going to call this video, you don't need faith to have faith. And I agree with that. And however, faith is such a broad term. And then I was like, am I talking about God? Am I talking about having hope? Am I talking about being successful? And I was like, I have no idea which one, because it really kind of applies to all of these three. But I guess coming from a person who used to be suicidal, I may just resume it to having enough hope to not mind being alive. Right. Oh. That is, I think, a reasonable, tangible sort of growth goal for the self-isolation period. So, yeah. We are not product placing. We just really like cold fizzy drinks, and we've already had too much coffee today. Not that there's anyway. Right. So. I want to kind of go back to the algorithm, and I think that was a very kind of vague type of content to many people, and I think you were right when you said that there's very few people will feel that they can relate to something as abstract as that, and I was like, well, that's fine, because that's why I put the algorithm alongside the tarot narrative, just to prove to people that it's quite a consistent sort of processing strategy across many fields of discourse, and I think, a lot of people find it in religion. Am I allowed to share your belief system?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so many of you might not know, stop torturing me! Sorry. So Rebecca's subconscious is having, and mine for that matter, they're having some issues, right? And we don't know what it's about yet, but they keep sending each other these really terrible messages. So for instance, when, we all know when we're stressed, we tend to have health issues that they get worse, let's say. So for instance, for me, it tends to be digestive issues. So I have heartburn, but I also have insomnia when I'm stressed and stuff. Rebecca has, can I share that? Am I allowed to share that?
Yeah.
She has eczema, right? So she starts, it gets worse, and she starts scratching, right? And normally I don't mind, because one of the kids I take care of has eczema as well. I don't know this when he scratches, but when Rebecca scratches, it fucking sounds like some lumberjack is cutting a log.
I don't realize it really until I see you near me. I realize I should stop.
Yeah, and I've been telling her all day, stop, woman, stop torturing me. Okay. Right, so back to the algorithm and how I want to kind of elaborate on that. So Rebecca, in addition to being, her subconscious being very tormented right now, and it's tormenting mine, and my subconscious torments me, she's also a practicing Christian Orthodox.
I hope I am.
I mean, to the degree of her knowledge. And I just took that for granted when she told me she's a practicing Christian. Well, she never told me, it just kind of like, this kind of made sense out of context, I inferred. I never really had an issue with that. And the thing is, the reason why I want to kind of talk about how our relationship developed and the notion of faith is that I was born in a Christian Orthodox family as well. And then half of, some of my family are practicing Catholic Christians, right? And then I went to high school at a Baptist Christian school, right? And I spent 8 years there. Some of which, up until about the 5th or 6th grade, I used to attend church, and I'm quite familiar with the Gospels, and I'm quite familiar with the holy texts. And then at some point in high school, when I started rebelling, right, and all my old traumas started catching up with me, and I made new friends, and blah blah blah. I started using my brain and questioning narratives, and I've been told I'm not saying I did it well, right? I started kind of questioning narratives about God and stuff like that, and so I became an atheist. And of course I read all of us, I think, when we're in high school have one or another nihilistic writer that really gets to us, right? And most in Romania used to be Cioran, everyone was hardcore, right? Yes. Cioran, and among the poets, obviously, who wrote Plumb? Baghiu. That's a Romanian poet. And then I had Albert Camus. He was well, first of all, I fancied him because he was so cool. He was also one of my dead crushes because I had some too. Yeah, I must have had him on my desktop for 5 years or something. Just mostly because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be cool. Anyway, but I wrote The Stranger, and The Stranger really got me, and the whole notion of living purposelessly. I really tried to make peace with that, and maybe it was kind of hard then, but as I kind of grew older, it got easier, I think, and that was even during my pre-depression years, right? I was if there's nothing out there, and if all I can do is make the best of what's available, you work with what you got. I wasn't all that, I didn't feel like it was all that bad. I think that the depth of human connection, and I think the complexity and depth of art and having aesthetic experiences, were sufficient, and if that didn't do the trick for me, there was always food, and I like food, and in addition to that, there's sex, and I like sex, so yeah, I had a few reasons to not bother too much and to search for ways of validating or invalidating the idea of God. So I let people, I let Christians do their thing, right? It's live and let live, and I'm gonna do my thing, and then, as I kind of got older, I think perhaps because, the reason why I became an atheist in the first instance was that I had no reasonable way to explain God, right? And then as I grew older and a little bit wiser, I was I don't have a reasonable way of explaining God's lack of existence either, so I made do with just calling myself agnostic under the very nice and comfortable guise of man, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. There's no way to know. I don't know, man. And that was it. So that was my spiritual position to the world. And I didn't really try to elaborate on that because I was I'm just going to pretend he doesn't exist and make the best of it and try not to be an asshole so that, therefore, the terrible state of the world wouldn't be, made more terrible by the addition of my assholeness to it, right? Yeah. So, and that was good. That was good enough for me, and that worked well. For quite a few years, I was I am okay with the notion that I just might never know, and that maybe that crazy attempt to know for sure was was doing me more harm than good, and quantum physics hasn't made amazing. They have made amazing progress and leaps of scientific certainty that we now have, to some degree, because every piece of information is kind of relative, isn't it? I was pretty convinced that it wasn't going to happen within my lifetime. that we wouldn't know for sure. That physics won't prove that God doesn't exist or does exist, or that we have this amount of knowledge, and according to the probability of such and such thing to lead to such and such outcome. I was like, I'll never know. And then I feel like that question has changed, but then again, it's such a loaded statement to make, because you guys don't know what I mean when I say God, or you don't know what I mean when I say faith, and you don't know what I mean when I say certainty, and you guys don't know what I mean. And neither do I. So I'm going to keep it a little bit, I'm going to simplify it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who don't know what I mean when I say the algorithm. Wait. The algorithm. It's going to be a thing now, it's going to be a thing. The algorithm was the whole, in the previous video, if you go back and watch that, I was talking about a 5 to 6 step or a 4 to 5 step, I forget, algorithm to what I called conflict resolution. And then I said, no, it's not conflict resolution, because it might also be learning. And then I was like, well, it might not also be that, because some other people might call it something else. And then I was like, the first thing that comes to mind when you go through the steps, the first thing that comes to your mind of this is label. That's your trauma. Remember I said, that's your trauma. And it just so happened that my trauma is that because my early childhood was so conflict rich, I could never really get myself heard. Like no one would really pay attention to me, because no one assumed that I would be the one to bring conflict resolution, right? So no one really paid attention to me, and that's my trauma, right? Not being taken seriously, that's my trauma. Like the conflict, no one believed that I can solve the conflict, right? Because that's how you prove that people are worth that people listen to you, because you're outcome oriented. I used to call it efficient, but someone brought to my attention that might not be the best term. So I was outcome oriented, and no one believed me to be outcome oriented, and I was very frustrated because of that. And for a while I struggled to prove myself, and then I gave up on that, and then I was like, well, so what if no one pays attention to me? And I said, I don't have to let that affect my life, but of course it did. And I was like, okay, again, as a result of that, I have numerous failed relationship attempts, and well, I don't try anymore, just so everyone knows. And then I've had, depression and insomnia, and became suicidal, and apparently, so it's an issue, okay? I'm like, fine, it was an issue, okay? So I thought about it. And I didn't want to think about it, but this is how it happened. So if anyone wants to know how I overcame depression and insomnia basically overnight, like this. So one nice December morning, I got an enraged phone call from one of my relatives pointing out a family death that had occurred in my immediate family, right? So and asked me what I was going to do about it. And I was like, excuse me, because I didn't know anything about it, right? So she told me about it, and this is some debt my father incurred. Now, the reason why I have no issue talking about this is because my father is like me. He has no sense of privacy. He doesn't mind just putting the truth on the table, and he doesn't give a shit what people think about him. So there we go. I don't mind becoming a bit specific. Right, so my dad had some debt, and that was a result of alcohol abuse, which had resulted from the fact that he crashed the car he crashed our family car in a way that prevented him from opening the trunk. So my mom and my dad had to force it open, right? And then they had to fix the car. And they both incurred debt. They split the bill. My mom covered her bit. Sorry, Mom, if I'm getting too personal, but you can't speak English, and some of our immediate family can't either. And you said I'm allowed to say stuff in English, so. Right, but my father didn't, and that exponentially grew over the course of about 6 months. So when I found out about it, it was, it wasn't spare change anymore, right? So I got an angry phone call from one of my family members. Said, what are you gonna do about this debt? And everyone's abandoning your dad, but I'm not abandoning your dad, and you should do something. And I was like, okay. Right, I wasn't going to touch upon this yet, but since my hand is forced, and I solved that problem that morning within 4 hours. And then the process kind of got me through to analyze how it occurred. And the way I solved these problems was following the algorithm, and which at the time I believed was an algorithm to conflict resolution. And I realized, okay, what do I know for sure? Well, you know, I know that my parents had that, and I know that I didn't know about it. And in order to fix it, I need to get some information, right? And so that I can find an efficient way of paying the debt. So my rules were, something's happened and there is debt, and I don't know anything about it, and no one told me anything about it. But, you know, I wanted the outcome to be paying the debt. And so I was like, okay, I will assume the above statements to be true. They were, of course. So remember, step one, your axioms. Set your rules, set your things that you know to be true. That's number one. Number two was assume that everyone agrees that those are true. Now, I knew for certain that something had occurred because I got a phone call from my relative informing me. And I also knew that my parents knew that the event occurred because, you know, allegedly it occurred, you know. And also that I knew that they didn't tell me anything about it. So I knew for a fact that my parents would agree that these two statements are true as well. So we had make the leap of, like, what I used to call step 2, leap of faith. This wasn't a leap. I already had the information. I already knew my parents couldn't deny it, so I just informed them that I am aware, right? So they couldn't deny that. And I was like, based on these two things, and the fact that we all want for this problem to get solved, or at least I do very much, and now that I know about the problem, we can't deny that the problem is there anymore, let's try and solve it. And they're like, will you work with me so we can solve this problem so that that doesn't get out of hand? And so I established that we all want the same thing, right? We all want the same outcome. So they were motivated to kind of cooperate. So that was step 2. And step 3, I asked them to break it down to me as your rule. I know an accident occurred and I didn't know anything about it, and we all want to pay we all want this conflict to be resolved, this debt to be paid, so we can all live easier. And then, you know, for me not to get angry phone calls from my relatives while I'm just working away at university writing my PhD. So, you know, considering I had already found out that my parents had nothing to lose anymore by telling me, of course they told me. They broke it down, right? And via that channel, I figured out, found out what happened, found out that, you know, my sister knows about it, asked her for what she thinks we should do. We both agreed that we're just gonna cover the cost. Again, my sister, I'm sorry if this is embarrassing to you, but I feel that, okay, I will ask you if I'm allowed to post this video before I post this video. And then, if I post this video, I want everyone else out there to assume I got my sister's permission. You know, I'll let her check, don't worry. And so we found out, like, what amount of money we owe to who, and that we need bank details to organize a transfer, and we did that, and that was, you know, that was the outcome achieved. So that's when I figured out the steps, right? So, rules, you know, agreement, mutual agreement that the above rules or what we know to be true is true for both parties, and that we both want the same outcome. So I assumed that everyone wanted the same thing as I did. I had no reason to assume that everyone wanted that. I pretended it was true and took all the necessary steps, therefore, to find out what I need to do to get to the outcome, right? And then number 5, resolution. Debt paid, everyone's happy, yay. Okay, and then as I thought about this process, I abstracted the steps more and more and more and more, and I wrote them. I started speaking to Rebecca about it, and I wrote them down to tell other people about it and see if, you know, if we can apply them to, I don't know, to, you know, whatever other beneficial mutual outcomes or conflict resolution processes there might be out there. But of course, you know, the people I wanted to collaborate with some of them I had left it in very awkward situations from previous interactions. I was like, oh my god, I don't want to talk to this person, but I might need to talk to this person. And I realized, so how do I solve that conflict so that I can, you know, see if there's a collaboration, if there is a mutual outcome that we both desire, that we can both, you know, and that we can both benefit from an activity. So for instance, you know, when I pitched the idea for this YouTube channel to Rebecca, my assumption was that, you know, we have something interesting to talk about and maybe we can both benefit from it. So that was my assumption. And I told her my assumption, assuming that maybe she might agree. I didn't know for sure. She might have been like, oh my god, no, I'm so private, you know, which she is, which is why she's on the screen.
I'm a little bit private. We can do this.
But apparently we found a way that sort of mediates that risk for her, right? So I assumed that was true. I didn't know for sure, but I pitched the idea, risking the possibility that she might say no. But then again, the risk was so small, I didn't really have that much to lose, right? But I had this to gain. And we're on our 4th episode. You know, allegedly, if my sister lets me post this. We're on our 4th episode, and the way I managed to do this was applying the algorithm to Rebecca, right? And I was like, would you like to do a YouTube channel? She might say no. Oh my god, she might say no. I'll just pretend she's gonna say yes and see what happens. And she said yes! And therefore, oh behold, you know, I was like, okay, how do we do this? What are your problems? I don't want to be on screen. No problem, we can put you off screen. Do you still want to do it? Yeah? Shall we just improvise because I have no idea how we're going to carry it out? Yeah, sure. And here we are, episode 4. Right. And then to convince other people to get on the show, which I have yet to achieve, as you might have noticed. I had to resume contact with people who I really didn't want to. Like, it was going to be so awkward. So like, so yeah. Anyway, but I did, and the way I did that is I gave them a piece of information that they needed to understand why we left the situation in a very awkward situation, and the desired outcome for me was so they can sit down, have coffee with me, so we can discuss the possibilities, right? And it worked. So because I didn't know for a fact. So let me see if you guys follow me here. I didn't know for a fact that the algorithm would work. I didn't have faith that I had discovered the key to life, the universe, everything, my success, my happiness, and, you know, the end of depression and the end of insomnia and the end of, like, emotional self-torment. And no, I didn't. You know, I didn't. But I pretended. I pretended the algorithm was true just for one test at a time. So, first I pretended that the algorithm would work if I solved the conflict in my family. And it did. And then I pretended the algorithm would work, then I was like, I'm gonna tell Rebecca and risk the possibility of looking like a lunatic. And I was like, well, I mean, you know, I have no sense of privacy, I've never really been suicidal. What can I possibly have to lose from, you know, looking like a lunatic in front of Rebecca? And she seems pretty sound, and if I do, I do, and if I don't, you know, never. Even better, we get to do this, you know? And I did, and she didn't think I was a lunatic. Okay. And then I applied the algorithm to, I was trying to save a relationship of mine that was still in at the time, and I didn't know, like, this is the thing, I didn't know I would break up. Like, I went in there, totally convinced that I'd be walking in the room and proving to my boyfriend that I'm not insane, right? I was just manic because I was tripping on my own serotonin. And so I didn't even assume there was a possibility that I might end up losing the relationship because I was riding that high horse. And I went there and the breakup took me by surprise, and I was like, I didn't even know it was happening until 2 days later. Yeah, it's like I had this discussion with my then boyfriend on Thursday, and then he gave me such a vague fucking response that it could have meant both things. And I was like, kept sending him information to help him make up his mind, and then on the Saturday he informed me, and I was like, oh, alright, okay. Well, fine. Because I realized that, you know, and I've talked about this in a previous video, I realized that I don't want to be with someone who doesn't trust my judgment and can't respect me for it. Like, well, first of all, I can't be with someone who doesn't trust me, period. And I can't really be with someone who doesn't respect me because, like, how am I gonna function in a relationship like that? Like, it's always gonna be unfulfilling. And of course nothing he's gonna ever do to try to please me is ever gonna really please me, because what I really wanted was respect and trust. So, and I was like, and that made the breakup, like, it didn't feel like a breakup at all. It just, what it did is it revealed to me that the relationship wasn't the one I would want for myself anyway, and I had no problem giving it up. And, you know, like, as in, everyone was asking me, like, why aren't you sad, Olivia? I'm like, I have no fucking clue. Like, I don't know, maybe because it was my choice. And I find that if people make choices they can live with, there is no pain. I mean, I can't say this to be universal, but I can say that with regards to my most recent breakup. And God knows, like, I used to be the one who made a fucking tragedy out of my emotional life, right? And all my relationships and anyway. So I applied the algorithm there. So I only needed to pretend like it would work to clear up my relationship, and it did, just not in the way I expected it. And then then I applied it in more and more and more instances. But the way I did it was I chose, because the thing is, like, if you say something like this, let's pretend the algorithm is true with regards to the notion that God exists. I'm like, whoa, man, no. Because how the fuck are you going to do step 3 and break that shit into paradigms and underlying clauses and prove that each of one is true? It's going to be really hard, right? So don't go there. Don't go there. Because it's just too big of a task, right? So you only, what I did, because I wasn't gonna, my purpose wasn't to find faith in something. It wasn't. I was just applying this algorithm with a view of, solving all the conflicts in my life at some point. Once I pinned it down, I was like, okay, I'll just apply it to all the conflicts in my life and just like work out through all the relationships that I do feel bad about losing and that I would maybe want to rectify. So I just started randomly apologizing to everybody. And the truth is, I had reasons to. It's not like I really analyzed my conduct and I realized, like, I was an idiot here, and I was massively idiotic there. And to be honest, I do believe that I've been an idiot very much until January this year, and I've been an idiot ever since as well. But those are misinterpretations, and I know now that the errors are a result of my faulty thinking of other people's behavior. So I believe that maybe I'm less of an idiot than I used to be, just by first inspecting myself and then inspecting the other person. Because we all operate with different definitions and understandings of things, like faith and God and trust and and what's right and what's wrong and what's decent behavior and what isn't. So I was just checking the algorithm, right? And this is why the algorithm can also be called learning. Ooh, okay. That means we're at 29 minutes. Okay. We're at 29 minutes. I need to go stop the camera and turn it back on so that we have video when we come back. And we are back. Right. I don't want to talk for another 28 minutes, but we're just going to assume that will be the case. We found out why we keep losing video after 29 minutes. Apparently, this type of camera has a preset recording button, but there's a capacity of a clip of 29.59 minutes or 4 gigabytes, so it automatically stops there. So there we go. Thank you, Aline, for enlightening me. Hopefully this will improve the quality of our videos, because they'll, have videos. Anyway. So I was talking about how I was repeatedly testing the algorithm. The only thing I had to, but in doing so, I was applying the algorithm to the algorithm. Because what I was doing is, like, I will assume that this algorithm is true, and for any desired outcome, if I apply it, it's gonna come true. So that was the assumption. And step 2 was, like, I will commit to believing that this assumption is true, right? That leap of faith. And then I was like, okay, so in order to prove that the algorithm exists, I need to apply the 4 steps to a particular conflict or situation or blah, whatever, or something that I want to test out, or belief system. But mostly I started with conflicts. And it was very much, I needed to resolve conflicts so that I can get people in a position where I can negotiate collaborations with them. So that was the reason. So, and by applying it and applying it and applying it, throughout my life, every time I had to make a choice, I would assume that the best possible outcome isn't what was going to happen. So therefore, I never got to test the algorithm before. But as this happened in my life, I started making the assumption that the best possible outcome to a situation will happen if I apply this algorithm. So that's what I did. And the number of best possible outcomes that did happen as a result of me applying this algorithm to various situations in my life resulted in a set of experiences where the best possible outcome happened more often than the worst possible outcome, right? And what that developed in me, because how do we uphold beliefs? Someone gives us a piece of information, like God exists, and God is like this and like that and like this, or truth is the best thing in the world, or doing the right thing, or love and compassion are the best things in the world because more people are happy as a result of having these attitudes than unhappy. And because I used to be depressed, the series of, and I had a very traumatic, I had a traumatic childhood, and I was not really highly regarded because I was the youngest and was a girl and was like Eastern European and I was an immigrant and I was the receptionist, and like if not that I was insane. Like for one reason or another, people had reasons not to particularly take me seriously. And so therefore my number, so if anyone gave me something like a notion like, Olivia, you can do so much more than you think you can, I would be like, nah. Don't test that theory, you can't develop self-esteem, right? So when I found out the algorithm, I was like, I don't need to pretend that this is universally true. I need to pretend that this is true for this particular action that I'm taking right now. And that was a risk I could mediate, right? I didn't have very much to lose if I believed that that was true. And so that allowed me to test this algorithm in so many instances that lo and behold, I was like, I can do a lot more than I thought I could do, because like I've never done a YouTube channel before, and that's more than I've ever done before. So, there we go. And like I can write an article or a PhD chapter within a week, and I never, provided that all the research is done in Evernote. And I did, and that's never happened before until it happened. And, all these assumptions that I would make about what I am capable of doing and what I'm not capable of doing, I started testing, right? And that happened so much that the number of instances within which this algorithm could potentially be true for the next time I want to try it out was higher than the number of times I hadn't assumed that it would be true for the next time I try it out. And because it's true enough, and this is something that we keep coming back to, Jordan B. Peterson, for him is like, things don't have to be true, because what is universally true? Like, how do you get to know what's universally true across the board for everyone? Because we, like, the way we come and acknowledge the world and the set of experiences that informs that system of beliefs vary widely, and then we're 7 billion people, and some of us are male, and some of us are women, and some of us are children, and some of us, are elderly. And some of us have had certain types of childhood, and some of us didn't, and some of us lived during the time of the coronavirus, some of us lived during the time that didn't happen yet. And all of these things inform what we believe. So the way we believe is a highly subjective process, I think, because it's informed by our own sets of experiences. Think about it as the database of our memories and what observations we made on them, right? So that is what informs our belief system in effect. If you claim that it's something other than that, like, you're fucking deluding yourself. Because and I can argue that in another video. So what we do is we take a belief and we compare it to our entire, to all the experiences, relevant experiences from our database of experiences and memories and things we believe or that seem plausible because X and Y. And I had tested the algorithm so many times that the number of times when it was very likely to be efficient and outcome-oriented than it was to not be efficient and outcome-oriented became significant enough that I, when making a choice, would opt to take the risk to assume it's true in a particular instance where I could apply it and get a certain outcome. So take it this way. We don't know if God exists, but we also don't know if God doesn't exist. We don't, right? And most people want to play it safe and assume, if I believe that God doesn't exist, I can't be let down by that, so I won't have a moral collapse or, a sense of hopelessness that might make me want to be suicidal. And then I was like, I'm not going to call it God. I was like, let's assume that this algorithm is universally, it's always going to work, instead of assuming that it's always not going to work. And I was like, what do I have to lose by assuming that it works and be wrong about that? Well, not much, because that's what I did before, and I was depressed and I was insomnia and I was suicidal and okay. So I was like, so I'll assume it's gonna always work. Like, instead of checking it in every little instance, but that's what I did in the beginning, because then I didn't have, if you make the risk small enough, you have nothing to lose when it turns out not to be the case, when your desired outcome doesn't come about. And what you do is you test it again by modifying some strategies. Like, you go, because assume you made the mistake, not the universe, okay? And that's what I did. And I went and I tested it back, and at some point something happened. It became true in another way. I might not have I'll think about it. I'll think about an example, but I think the example is irrelevant. Like, if the algorithm isn't universally true, and I make a fool out of myself, out of assuming that it might be here on YouTube, and you guys think I'm a lunatic, I already don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't give a shit. However, if it does turn out to be true for you, like, it's true enough for me. As a result of that, I made this YouTube channel, and I wrote an article that I pitched to The Economist Pandora culture blog yesterday. So I have to hear back from them, right? If it's not, you know, I get a polite email from the lady editor who handles the Pandora culture blog saying, "Thank you very much, Olivia. This is a fascinating little article you read. Unfortunately, it's not suitable for us." And I'll be like, "Cool, man, no problem. Thanks for reading it." And that'll be the end of that, right? But what if they say yes? You know, like, what if they say yes? So I took that risk. And the thing is, if you can't risk that big of a thing from the very onset, make it a manageable, tiny risk. It's like, just assume, if I apply this algorithm to only this game of poker, and I win or I lose, but if I only wager £5, I don't lose that much, so it's not that big of a deal. You do that throughout an entire 4-hour session where, you bet £5, then £10, and then you work out how much you're willing to wager on being wrong. And if you can't, blame it on someone else. This is what I told Rebecca yesterday. I was like, because I'm trying to get her to test the algorithm in her life, and I was like, I know your biggest fear is making a fool of yourself, right? Like, yeah. That's your biggest fear. And I was like, well, say something outrageous, and say I said it, because I don't care about being ridiculous, right? And then test it that way, because then you don't have anything to lose. And do that a sufficient number of times until you come to your own conclusion about whether this strategy, this outcome-oriented strategy, call it which one, conflict resolution, learning process, manipulation, I don't know, it's a game of odds. Yes. Repeat the test a sufficient number of times so that within the set of experiences of your own life, the number of times it worked is larger than the number of times it didn't work, so that when it comes to the point of asking yourself, do I believe this algorithm will always work? You don't feel like you're losing that much about being wrong. And the thing is, sometimes it won't work. It's just, but then if you make the risk of such nature that you don't mind being wrong about it and just trying another time but with different variables, I believe, from my experience, which I draw from my set of experiences from the database that I hold, and from the number of times I've tried it, and from the number of times I didn't try the strategy, I do believe it will work. And, okay, so, if, let's say, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. If we believe that there is a higher ordering force in the universe, according to which, if you're optimistic and hopeful, you will get the best possible outcome. If you believe this exists, and is always going to ensure your best possible outcome, does that mean, is that, like, how would you guys define God? Because I would define God like that. There is a particular strategy to apply which consistently renders the best possible outcome for all involved parties. That involves, and I'm going to come back to conflict resolution because that's the way I realize why I'm a liberal. If I want to solve conflict, I can't force the person who I'm having the conflict with to assume that what I believe is true. I'm going to let them hold their belief and try to allow them to convince themselves that they are wrong. And that's what I did within my relationship. Because, the assumption was that I'm crazy. And I was like, what do you call crazy? Or what do you call unstable? And it was like, well, throughout a consistent, a certain amount of time, there is no consistent way within which I can predict your behavior. And I proved that there was. This algorithm. I was always, in every choice I was making, I was applying this algorithm. And I was like, is that what you call, consistent in time? We take an amount of time. And I proved that within most of my decisions, this is the algorithm that I used to make them. And I was like, do you believe that allows my behavior to be predictable? Lo and behold, it was. At least to me. That proved to me that I'm stable. And that, of course, made us try and redefine what stable or unstable means. And the thing is, depending on your definition of God and my definition of God, is that there is there is a strategy which you can consistently apply in time that will always render the best possible outcome, and that, you know, gives me hope that there is a point to living, because if I, you know, I can apply this strategy in a vast number of, you know, situations to get the best possible outcome. And what I believe to be the best possible outcome is, you know, not being miserable, being quite content, being in good company, you know, like benefiting from those cool stuff and things like friendship and, you know, happiness and like enthusiasm and curiosity, and that allows you to have a sense of wonder and awe. And I'm like, okay, so does that mean I'm hopeful now, that I have faith in something higher than myself that ensures that I get to have access to these experiences? Yes. Is that what it means to have faith? Depending on how you define that, you know, maybe not. I would define that faith like that. Faith is the belief, the very, you know, optimistic belief that every time I do something, the best possible outcome is possible, you know, and there might be some rules to that, provided you apply this algorithm. And I do. And every time I do it, something good comes of it, or at least something bad doesn't come of it, you know. And that's the way I ended up having faith in something that didn't require me to have faith, because I didn't make a leap of faith. I made a little tiniest, I made a gamble. I made a little tiny gamble. I just made it enough times that it became so consistent that within my set of experiences, it was, and according to that set, it was likelier that it's true in the following little instance as well. And if something is true for today, and something is true for tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes today, I'm trying to describe mathematical induction. Okay, so I'm going to get logical here. If something is true for n set of circumstances, and something is also true for n plus 1 set of circumstances, if you do that a number of times by transforming n plus 1 into the new n, you demonstrate that it's consistently always true. And you don't have to prove that faith is justifiable forever. You have to prove that faith is justifiable today, and then try again tomorrow, and then try again the day after that, and then after a while you're going to be tired of testing it every day. You're just going to stop it. You're just going to assume it's usually true, right? And that is faith. And, you know, to end this video, I would like to admit I was wrong, and this goes out to a very close friend of mine and his entire family, I've had these discussions with him, like, okay, so Raul Baghiu, this is for you. You were right when I said I can't do a leap of faith. I was wrong. I can. It just has to be small enough that I can do it every day. So I don't need to assume that God exists forever. I just have to assume he exists today, act like he's there, and see what comes of it. And good things have come of it since January until now, so I'm going to probably keep applying the strategy. So you were right, I was wrong. I can make leap of faith leaps, but they're really tiny. So for any other person out there who believes, you know, because they're analytical people and they work on logic, make the leap small enough to test the theory. See what happens. Because I could, and I did, and then in such a way that, you know, if God turned out not to be, how to say, if there was no point for me to have faith in something higher than myself that allows for the best possible outcome to be predicted on most occasions, then I would have only been wrong today. And, you know, I'm wrong very many times, and I made a fool out of myself before, and I've been wrong before, and had things to lose before, and so that wouldn't, you know, it wasn't a big deal. Right. Raul, and to the Baghiu family as a whole, and Yulia and the kids, they're very dear to my heart, so this is why this video goes out to them, because I have this feeling that they'll be very happy when they hear it, so this is for you guys. And for everyone else, because I can't assume that I was absolutely clear for everyone. Was I reasonably clear?
Yeah,
to you?
Yeah.
Okay, no, because I'm satisfied if I'm clear to at least one person, and that person's here, so I don't care about the rest of you guys. But I do, however, hope that it's helpful to some of you people out there. You know, of course, I also understand that the way I've defined faith and the way I've defined God is very loose, and it might challenge some people's belief, and some people would, would assume that this is definitely not a very good way of proving that there's a point to having faith in a higher power, but, it was true enough for me. So it might be, it might be true enough for someone else, at least one other person, or at least might get one other person to think, and that, if it does, that's absolutely enough for me to be satisfied that I made this video today. Because I've left the world not worse off than it already was. Okay, cool. So that's it.
Good for you, yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, see you guys next time.